Hello, this is News Mongolian MNB World. I'm Jugdir Gambold. And for our top stories. The regular cabinet meeting addresses urgent issues such as flood risks, education disparities, and meat reserves. Mongolia's PISA ranking showed some significant educational challenges. Mongolian representative participates in OSCE meeting. For the news, stay with us. The regular cabinet meeting held on Wednesday addressed the critical issues affecting Mongolia, including the heightened risk of white zone in specific regions, education challenges revealed by the PISA 2022 assessment, and the preparation of meat reserves for the capital's population.
The Information and Research Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology and Environment of Mongolia released the zone risk map on November 30th, indicating that 30 SOMs in 11 provinces are currently at risk of white zone. The risk assessment highlighted that over 70% of the total area is at high risk, with 26% classified as very high and 43% as high. An additional 26% as at moderate risk, while 5% faces a low risk. In response to the zone situation, as per Government Decree number 286, 30 SOMs in 11 provinces have been identified as experiencing a white zone, and 48 SOMs in 12 provinces are deemed to be in poor condition. The State Emergency Commission emphasized the high zone risk in the Gobi and western regions, which experienced a drought last summer, and in central and eastern provinces that received substantial snowfall. Officials have been instructed to implement partial readiness measures in these areas. Meanwhile, the Minister of Education and Science, Inhamaglan, presented the results of Mongolia's participation in the Program for International Student Assessment. Organized by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Mongolia, participating for the first time, ranks 47th in mathematics, 65th in reading, and 53rd in science out of 81 countries. Prime Minister Oyurdan Lofson-Namsra has assigned Minister Inhamaglan to propose further measures based on the Pisa 2022 assessment results and policy recommendations. The cabinet has also emphasized the commitment to reducing educational disparities, focusing on improving the quality of education for urban and rural students, enhancing school quality, and ensuring teacher competence in SOMs. Prime Minister specifically instructed the development of a scholarship policy and relevant procedures for students who are studying to become teachers. In another critical aspect, governors of provinces and the capital city were tasked with managing the procurement of livestock and meat that meet standards to create sufficient reserves for spring needs. Ministers Bolorcholon and Javlan were assigned to explore funding sources for this initiative. Authorities will closely monitor the quality and safety throughout the preparation, supply, distribution, and sale of the reserve meat to prepare 8,000 tons of meat reserves to meet the spring food demand of the capital's citizens.
In its inaugural participation in the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA 2022, Mongolia achieved noteworthy milestones while facing significant educational challenges. The assessment, conducted from April 11 to May 14, 2022, included a sample of 7,300 students from 196 schools across the country.
One standout achievement is Mongolia's students reporting higher life satisfaction than the global average, scoring 7.2 compared to the global average of 6.4 and the Asian average of 7. The Minister of Education and Science, Inhamaglan, emphasized this achievement during his presentation of the Pisa 2022 report on December 5th of 2023. However, he also acknowledged the need for a thorough examination considering post-pandemic developments like a school lunch program, employment of psychologists in schools, and initiatives against youth and peer bullying.
The outcome of the ranking shows us that every child receives an equal start in education. In addition, in the future, we are planning to pay attention to adults' education level and income, which are important factors when it comes to their children's education.
Despite these positive aspects, Mongolia ranked 47th out of 81 countries in the overall assessment. In mathematics, the country scored 425, trailing 2.3 years behind the international average and 1.2 years behind the Asian standard. The assessment also revealed disparities between public and private schools in mathematics, readings, and natural sciences, with public schools generally outperforming private institutions. Half of all 15-year-old students in Mongolia didn't meet the basic requirements of mathematics proficiency. However, 2.3% demonstrated above-average math skills, receiving top scores. In reading, Mongolia ranked 65th, scoring 378 and falling 5 years behind the global average, and 2.5 years behind the Asian average. Natural sciences scores placed Mongolia 53rd, indicating a 3-year lag behind the international average and 1.8 years behind the Asian average.
Please take a look at current affairs of Mongolia.
The delegation led by Tenguk Mijitdorj, Mongolia's permanent representative to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, played an active role in the 38th OSCE Ministerial Council meeting held in Skopje, the Republic of North Macedonia, from November 30th to December 1st, 2023. During the meeting, representatives from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe participating states engaged in discussions covering various topics, including strategies to ensure regional security, the reinforcement of human rights and democracy, the promotion of economic development, and the safeguarding of the environment. Addressing the plenary session on behalf of the Mongolian government, Tenguk Mijitdorj outlined the key objectives and priorities of Mongolia's foreign policy. Additionally, he articulated Mongolia's stance on regional issues. Throughout the event, he held meetings with several ministers from participating states and senior officials of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. The significance of the 38th OSCE ministerial meeting was underscored by the consensus reached among participating states, leading to the appointment of Malta as the chairperson in office for 2024. Furthermore, the terms of office for 4 senior Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe officials were extended for another 9 months, marking notable developments during this gathering.
Please take a look at currency exchange rates provided by the Mongol Bank. Now here comes foreign news partnered with international news agencies. EU President Ursula von der Leyen said that the EU and China have agreed to have balanced trade relations following her talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in Beijing on Thursday. Von der Leyen and Charles Michel from the EU Council were on a 2-day trip to China for talks with Xi that focused on disputes over trade, subsidies, and a deep divide over the war in Ukraine.
Briefing media about their meetings, von der Leyen reiterated that the European Union leadership rejected unfair competition as the bloc is calling on China to improve market access to address an annual trade imbalance of more than $200 billion between the two sides. China is unhappy with the European Union investigation into subsidies for electric vehicles and possible European Union restrictions on technology exports. The European Union has also urged China to use its influence with Russia to help bring an end to the Ukraine conflict.
Politically, European leaders will not be able to tolerate that our industrial base is undermined by unfair competition. We like competition. It makes us better. It lowers prices. It's good for the consumers. but competition needs to be fair. We insist on fair competition within the single market. Therefore, we also insist on fair competition from companies that come to our single market. And I'm glad that we agreed with President Xi that trade should be balanced between the two of us.
With China, we agree that getting life-saving aid to the most vulnerable must be a top priority. And together, we support reviving a political process based on a two-state solution.
Turning to climate change, von der Leyen recognized China's efforts in deploying renewable energy as outstanding while expressing concerns over its increased deployment of coal power plants. Von der Leyen said the two sides had an intense discussion on the topic of trade imbalance and the root causes, citing in part a slowdown in the Chinese economy, which is reducing domestic demand and prompting companies to divert their products to the European market.
If there are no progress made in this economic
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Thursday that if Hezbollah started an all-out war, then it will single-handedly turn Beirut and South Lebanon into New Gaza.
Netanyahu made the remarks while visiting and speaking with military officers. The footage was provided by the Israeli government press office. Israeli troops battled Hamas militants Wednesday in the center of the Gaza Strip's second-largest city, Khan Younis, the military said. The ground offensive has sent tens of thousands of Palestinians fleeing to the territory's southernmost edge and prevented aid groups from delivering food, water, and other supplies. 2 months into the war, Israel's offensive into southern Gaza was bringing to Khan Younis the same fierce urban fighting and intensified bombardment that obliterated much of Gaza City and the north of the territory in recent weeks. The United Nations says some 1.87 million people, over 80% of the population of 2.3 million, have already fled their homes, many of them displaced multiple times. Almost the entire population is now crowded into southern and central Gaza, dependent on aid. Israel's campaign has killed more than 16.2 thousand people in Gaza, most of them women and children, and wounded more than 42,000, the territory's health ministry said late Tuesday. The agency has said many are also trapped under rubble. The ministry doesn't differentiate between civilian and combatant deaths. Israel has vowed to fight on, saying it can no longer accept Hamas rule or the group's military presence in Gaza after the October 7th attack that triggered the war. Hamas and other militants killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and took captive some 240 people in that attack. An estimated 138 hostages remain in Gaza after more than 100 were freed during a ceasefire in late November.
All right, that's all for today. Thank you for staying tuned. We'll see you next time with more news and updates. Have a great day ahead.